Hey basketball coaches and players, today I am going to be breaking down Goran Dragic's basketball shooting form. Let's get down to the clipboard and let's check out Goran Dragic and how he shoots the basketball. Okay, so the first thing we are going to look at is a side angle so that we can see exactly how his toe to head or toe to fingertip shooting form looks like. So first off, what we have is right down on the toes, we have his left foot in front of his right, which is good because that's going to give him power, especially since he is a left-handed shooter. From there, what we have is his knees. His knees are slightly pointed out towards the right side, and same as his hips and his shoulders. Now, in theory, that shot should majority of the time go towards the right side. And this is something that a lot of left-handed players do when it comes to their shooting form. There's a lot of them who really overemphasize their left side being forward over the right side. Now, I'm not saying that this is incorrect or correct at the same time. Everyone has a different shooting form and what they find comfortable. There are a few things, however, that are the same when it comes to every great shooter, and Goran Dragic is definitely a very good shooter. And that is how their shooting arm is. Now, their elbow and their shoulder have to be in line with the basketball net. This is your aim for how straight your accuracy is going to be. And then generally, your elbow is going to be exactly underneath that ball as much as you possibly can, especially if you are a middle finger shooter like Goran Dragic, and we're going to get to that in a few seconds. Now, his set point is right about here, where the ball is just about at his left eye. I'm going to say that it's over top of the left eye, right in front of the forehead. From there, his arm is not exactly at a 90 degree, it's slightly back, which is okay. That's going to give him more power. From this angle, however, we are unable to see if there's any space between his palm and the ball. Now, generally speaking, you want to have at least a little bit of space between the palm and the ball because that's going to give you more control over the ball. However, having your palm on the ball will give you more accuracy, so you try to have a balance between the two as a shooter. You don't want to go all Shaq that has like a good 6 inches of space between his palm and the ball, but I will be breaking down Shaq's shooting form very soon. Now, when we drop Goran Dragic back down, when he is collecting that ball to go up to his set point, we try to see how many hinges there are in his shot. And what I mean by hinges is how many body parts move. So I'm not going to count that foot because he was catching that ball. From here, we see him sit down into his shot. His shoulders are over top of his knees, which are over top of his toes, so he's going to have a nice balanced shot. And now, when he's bringing it up, is he bending his elbow? No, he's not until that last second. His only hinge in his shot is his shoulder. You really want to cut down on how many parts of your body bend when you're taking your shot because that just cuts down on how many mistakes that can happen or how many issues that can happen if somebody tries to hit you when you're going up for your shot and things like that. So when he goes up for his shot, we see that's his set point. And now when he jumps, he is jumping straight up. We do see that he is pointing towards that right side, but his shoulder and elbow are in line, and generally speaking, we'll see in the next part of this breakdown where his elbow is actually underneath that ball, which allows it to go perfectly straight. Now, when he goes to release that ball, his elbow is above his eyes, which generally means that you're going to have some pretty good arc, but in how I like to look at it, I'm more of a math guy. I like to say, is his arm better than 45 degrees? This would be roughly 45 degrees here, and he is above 45 degrees, which means that he's going to have a lot of arc on his shot. Now, you want to have lots of arc on your shot because if you do, the rim is going to look really big to the ball because the ball is going to be dropping down into it. Meanwhile, if you don't have a lot of arc, the rim is going to look really small and it's going to rattle around in that rim. So that's why you want to have a lot of arc and generally have that elbow at that arm at above 45 degrees or your elbow above your eyes. Now you can do this by just recording yourself like I basically have when it comes to these players that I break down their shooting form with. Now this is a behind the back view of Goran Dragic, and as we can see, his elbow is pretty well underneath the center of that ball. It's pretty close, but it's at least underneath that ball, and if it was a different or a better angle taken from over here instead of here, if it was more 10 degrees more this way, we would probably see that it's exactly underneath that ball. Now, when we are looking at his offhand, this hand, what are we really looking at? Well, let's just really focus in on it. A lot of players will have that hand a little bit farther down, which will give it more balance. Usually players who have their hand above the ball don't usually have all that great of arc. However, Dragic does have really good arc on his shot. When we really slow it down, we notice that he does not have a thumb flick, and his actual shooting thumb is not really spread out all that far. It's actually almost underneath that ball and between the palm and the ball, which is quite interesting. His other fingers, however, are pretty well spread out, and I wouldn't say that they need to be spread out any farther. That is perfect. And now when we go up even farther into his shot, we notice that he has a middle finger release, his ring and pointer finger release from the ball first, and then his middle finger is the last finger to then touch that ball, and he flicks straight down, and then his wrist goes out towards that right side, which is fine because, well, let's face it, he flicked straight down and then it slightly came over towards that right side. We're not going to be nitpicking that because there's no sense in it. Now, when we really focus in on the shot, we're going to try and focus on how many times that ball rotates in the air. So we're going to be watching that Spalding name on there, and that's going to be one time around. Right about there is one time around. Now it's going to be coming around again. That's two. And then that's a half. And by the time it reaches the rim, it's almost, yep, right there. 3 times around. You generally want to have 2.5 rotations of the ball or more going towards the rim. Now, why is spin on your shot so important? Well, the spin on that shot is going to make that ball, if it hits that rim, it's going to make it super soft, so it wants to bounce around the rim and hopefully drop in like what we seen last year with Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs against the 76ers, how it kind of bounced around the rim like 500 billion times and then finally bounced in. That's why you want a lot of rotation on your shot. And if you're outside, a lot of rotation on your shot, I'm going to teach you a little bit of physics right now. When you're outside, you want a lot of rotation on that ball because I'm going to tell you right now, it cuts through the wind a lot easier. Now from this angle, we get to see a front angle, and we see that his knees actually come together, and a lot of players tend to do this. That's because they have more muscle strength on the outside of their quads instead of the inside, which is fine, but if you want to have an even more powerful shot to get even deeper range, you can still do this, but if you do some wall sits with a basketball right in between your knees, that's going to build up the inside of your legs, and that's going to allow you to be able to jump higher, but also have less stress on your knees when you're cutting in and out of the lane. And that will allow you to reduce the injury to your knees, but also allow you to extend your range on the basketball court. I hope that these tips help you become a better basketball player. If they do, hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time.